Welcome to the Show Up Dad, the podcast dedicated to helping fathers build strong bonds with their children. I'm your host, and today we have a very special guest, David Bauer. Before we dive into our conversation, I want to express gratitude to our sponsors for their support. This episode of the Show Up Dad is sponsored by Tall Man Equipment, a trusted provider of high-quality tools and equipment for the power line industry. Visit tallmanequipment.com to explore the wide range of products and how they can assist you. I also want to give a special shout out to the Show Up Dad Foundation. It's an organization dedicated to supporting fathers on the journey to show up for their families. Through workshops, resources, and a supportive community, Show Up Dad Foundation empowers dads to be present and make a positive impact on their children's lives. Learn more about their mission or how you can get involved at the showupdadfoundation.org. David Bauer, our special guest today, has always had a deep desire to be a dad. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood, he realized the importance of parental involvement in a child's life. With limited parental support in his own upbringing, David learned the value of making his child's world safe, loving, and predictable. Join us as David shares his insights and experiences on how to give your kids the best opportunity to be successful. He will guide us on a path of raising strong and independent children who will ultimately become strong adults and shape our future. Welcome to our show, brother.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate being here.
Absolutely, man. Well, let's go ahead and open up, David, by you telling us about your purpose and how you got started on your mission, if you don't mind, brother.
Yeah, no, not at all. I think that my wife and I started trying to do some businesses, and we weren't sure whether we were going to have children or not. And so we were really close friends. We were 5 years before we got married, and all of a sudden we had a couple of businesses going, and the question was, did we want to have kids or not? And we decided, kind of together, like, well, if we're going to do it, we really have to do it on purpose, like not just like our parents did. Neither of our parents really showed up at all, except with a belt. There wasn't a lot of guidance or direction. And we both grew up in the same town, not knowing each other, but we both knew we wanted to get the hell out of that town in a way. And so it was very good to have someone with the same kind of understanding of what it would take. And I was kind of a project manager type of person. And so I like this idea of saying, we're going to have a joint cooperation. We're going to have some rules. No is bigger than yes. We're going to let decisions being made with our children from as early as they can. We're going to have some things like we call it health, clean, and danger are the things we care about. Otherwise, it's up to them. From the very beginning, we kind of said, we're really going to let them make their own decisions, but we're going to put parameters on it. Like health, clean, and danger, you can turn it down with dating. But otherwise, like you want to wear green pants with, a red sweater or whatever, it looks fine to me. Who cares? So I think taking that type of approach from the very beginning, from when we had our children, we were going into it very purposeful. And I think, we're a little older, and we had 3 girls, 16 months and 16 minutes apart. So we had 3 kids under 2 years old. So it was really one of those things where, and the girl, the 16 minutes apart were identical twins. And we had to actually paint one of their toenails red so we know which one was which. It was one of those things that it was that. So it was very important to kind of know, okay, what are we doing? Let's kind of, and it really worked from the very beginning. So I think having that purpose and kind of going into like that, I talked to other fathers as I was doing it. We said, wow, how do you guys kind of get together? How do you kind of do that? We can see you guys are very organized on what's going on. Your kids seem to know what's going on. And I would kind of tell them some things. You should write a book. You should write a book. So my kids are now successful. We've gone through a lot of things, and we love them dearly, but we had to go through a whole decision-making on what they would allow me to write about. And so this happened to be something that we all agreed that I could write about and go through with them. That's why it's called Book 1. There may never be a book 2, but that's the idea, was that this was joint, even at least in understanding that I was going to do this. Not that they necessarily agree with what I've written. I like it as much as they do love the results. They're all very, successful young women. So, and my wife and I are very proud of them. But I think that some of this was like, we set expectations. We expect this to happen. We expect them to be off the payroll within 3 months after college. They heard that for 4 years, and they were off, man. That was it. And they were off, and it was done, and it was a little painful, but it happened, and they were ready for it. And they had some money to handle it for themselves for a little while, and boom, everything went fine. So I think sometimes it's really even at that end to push them all the way through. And so from the beginning to end, we set up some very good guide rails for them to be able to succeed on their own. And then, sometimes we had to put it in writing because there are women who sometimes need to hear it and see it and put their little initials next to it for us all to agree it happened. But once we got through those expectations and them understanding what they were, and they saw the other side of what they could do with that, they just took advantage of it. And it was great. They did great.
So let me ask you this, Dave. So you said about writing. I thought that was actually something really interesting. So you would have like milestones for them, like, hey, at this date you were to meet this date and check it. Is that what I'm getting? Or
they knew from the time that they were 5 or 6 years old that they were going to go into the best college they could get into outside of California. That was said as often as I could. You're going to college. 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 And by putting that in their brain, whether they were going to go to or not, everything we did around school was, you need to be at the top 20% of your class. This is why we expect that because you're going to college. And this was by having some kind of a goal and having that set in mind. And then every summer, they went to a college summer school where they could stay overnight in a dorm. So they could see what it was like to like share a bathroom and have, dinner down in some big commissary and have free time and all that and go back to sleep in a bunk bed. And so they had to do that for 2 weeks every summer. So when they started seeing that, there was no fear when they started going to thinking about college. So you kind of put it in your head, you're going to go to the best college you can get into. That's what it is. We want you to have that goal of having discipline, knowing that things are going to be around school. They're not going to be around, YouTube and TikTok and all the other crap. They're going to be around sports, and they're going to be around, these are the things to get into college. And so you have things that at least are expectations and direction. If you set no expectations, you can expect nothing. And that's what I found out. And I saw that with all my friends who, while I was raising kids, I'm like, man, I could see it. So I was like, no. Our kids are always going to know what we expect. And then if they don't meet those expectations, we can talk about that. But if you don't set expectations, you're going to expect nothing. And they did such an incredible job meeting expectations because they were clear and achievable. And they were celebrated when they were successful. Because, my parents never understood even what success was. And so who knew when you were meeting their expectations or they weren't? That was horrible. And I think, I was a Boy Scout just because I saw what, each grade required it to be. And I go, oh, this is how I get to Eagle Scout. So I got to Eagle Scout because I could see what it was. And so I think if you put those kinds of things in front of people, they really seem to want to go towards them. At least it gives them some reason to go towards them. If you have other things like beating them and other things where they don't want to please you, you're never going to get across with them. But if you show them love and show them attention and show them interest in what they like, that meets that expectation that you have, and it's a win-win for everybody.
Man, I like that you said that. When you're talking about this, I'm picturing vision. Okay, David. If you don't have a mark, say you're throwing an axe, and a good friend of mine told me this the other day. He's like, man, if you don't have a mark to throw that axe, how do you know you're going to hit your target?
Yeah.
And even that's what vision is.
Success is even mysterious because failure is the really way you know that you did something wrong. You know what went wrong. Success, you don't know which part of what you did is successful. So it's important to not focus that failure so bad. It's more like, okay, what did we just learn with that? And even with success, it's like, okay, why was that good? What do we want to make sure? So I think it's having the constant communication and conversation and sticking to what you expect of them, and not letting them use you against the other. God, so many parents, you could just see the parent-child dynamic going on where we have this joint cooperation where I'd never say anything. I'd be like, no. I know that's your mom. I don't even want to talk about that. We really had a good division. And if I wasn't even sure, I'd go, hey, who's doing what? So having that out there and no being bigger than yes was very strong and it worked.
No, I could totally see that, Dave. I wanted to ask you your experience as a father, right?
Yeah.
How did that shape your approach to parenting?
Yeah, I think that because my dad was a not show up dad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I love your name. I love the name of your show, The Show Up.
Thank you.
My dad was the opposite of the show up. He said he was like going to go save lives and stuff, but he was actually up seeing some girl. So it was not even a real life thing. He was kind of taking care of himself because he didn't have. So I
Yeah.
think that when you know that you have the wrong dad and you know what this can be so much different, I think that's where my head was like, well, this is not happening. We were kind of like, or maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we should just have more businesses and not, we were doing restaurants. So we were doing pizza restaurant and we were on a
Mm.
second restaurant. It's like, man, do we really want to do a third restaurant and have a baby? We were trying to figure that out. And I think it's really hard for people to go, well, I don't want to do it if I'm going to do it half-assed. And as it
Yeah.
turned out, we had to sell all the restaurants because all of a sudden we had 3 kids and it was just not going to work out. So anyway, so
Mm.
that was, I think that's being very on purpose. And I like to write. And I was kind of always in this idea of like, okay, I'm going to keep track of some things I did and I didn't do and what did work and what didn't work and reflection. And I did a lot of contracts because girls, girls go, I don't remember that. I don't remember how that worked. I don't, wait, what? Did I say that? So
Mm-hmm.
by I think the time they were 8, we started putting things in writing where they actually had to put their initials next to each line and then the sign at the bottom of the page. And I was just like over anal on this stuff so that I could go back and go, oh, no, page 4 right here. You're
Mm.
out for 3 weeks. Get out. And so it was very easy to enforce because I had
Mm-hmm.
paperwork behind girls. They were really tough.
I like that you said that it was easy to enforce. And that's something that we do with our own parenting ministry as well, right? We have a set of rules straight up for our home that they need to follow, right?
Yeah.
And it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's like
Yeah.
honor your mother and your father, honor your brother and sister, do not lie. Basic biblical principles, if that's what you want to call them, right? So we have this list of rules, and they know if they break them, there is no question at all. We go back to that board, we point it out, and we say, here, which one did you break? Here it is right here. You get a discipline for that. It's not me, it's you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Easy. It's right there. Yeah. We have it very clear for that to be a part of their understanding that we had these basic principles. So just part of their lives. We had a lot of things like that to kind of make sure we could be grounded in certain.
So what other strategies, you talked about the writing down, right? What other strategies that you use to encourage that independence and resilience in your children? What else did you do?
The biggest thing that I did was I created, it's kind of a story if you don't mind, but
no, go ahead, please.
There was I definitely did some traveling and I come home one time and I think the girls were 10 and 11 years old. So they were like 5th and 6th grade, 2 5th-year-olds in 6th grade, finishing going into 6th and 7th. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they were arguing over these things called Uggs, which are these kinds of shoes that they wanted. And my wife's like, man, you're going to drive us, poor. They want all Uggs. It's like $150 a pair. It's $450 for the 3 girls. And I don't know what to do. And I could tell, I've been gone for about 5 days. My wife was pretty crazy. It was a Sunday. The Raider game was on. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to take this. I'm going to watch the Raider game. And I'm going to get these girls going. Just leave me alone. So she left. And I worked on what was called a budget. And what we were going to learn was what girls wear. It was like, okay, let's write down on an Excel spreadsheet everything girls wear. It turned out there were 30 things girls wear. Socks, shirts, this, that, long sleeves, short sleeves. 30 things. Now, how many you need in a year? They wrote down how many you need in a year. Okay, now we're going to get prices. We got Dad's prices, which are Kohl's and J.C. Penney's and Target prices. We learned median. And so it was like, give me copies of each one because the Raiders is a long game. It's 3 hours. So I wanted pictures for each one, which gave me a price. And we take the middle one of each of those 3. Then we did their stores, which were Abercrombie and whatever the hell they wanted. And we did each one. It took them a long time. And so then we decided, okay, we're going to multiply. So we multiplied how many they needed a year times their price and how many times my price. And then we decided what percentage was going to be each one all the way down. And we had to argue. They thought it should be 50-50. I'm like, no, it should be more my weighted. In the end, as it turned out, okay, it was $420 a quarter. $420 because they asked for like taxes, and they took some things out, and we went back and forth. But $420 a quarter per kid. Okay, so $420 per quarter. Okay, which meant that because I didn't want to give them like, whatever that was, $1,680 all at once per year. I was like, I'm going to spread this out per quarter. Like, okay, this is right before school starts. This is right before the holidays. This is right before, there was right before things. So they were going to have per quarter $420. I made them sign a contract that said, here, I'm going to now give you on a debit card $420 every quarter. This is to buy your own clothes. Never, ever, ever ask for money for clothes. Here's all the things that will happen to you if you ask for money. No, the answer is going to be no every time. Okay? This is how you'll get it in a debit card. If the store says you're out of money, you're out of money. You want to borrow money before the end, it's going to cost you $50 at least. That's going to come out of the next. Plus, I was going to overcharge them what I call usury fees. So I just was like, I didn't want them to have any more than $420 a quarter. And so they each got a debit card. We all kind of agreed. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get a debit card. It's so easy to get a debit card. It's just debit. $420. I'm at $420, but they'll never talk to me about clothes again. All right. First day, my oldest daughter buys a pair of $300 Coach shoes. Check out my shoes. I go, man, school's about to start. Don't you need other clothes? She goes, no, all my other clothes fit. But look at my shoes. I'm like, okay. My wife's like, this is great. I love that she did that. The next one, like 3 days later, comes home and she says, I took all my friends to California Pizza Kitchen and they told me they'd pay me back.
My God.
They didn't pay me back. It was $80. They each were supposed to pay me back and no one paid me back. Will you pay me back? I said, if you just learn for $80 that no one will ever pay you back your entire life, that's the cheapest lesson you ever learned. Now she started crying and throwing herself, but whatever. The next day or so, she's like, you're right. No one's ever going to pay me back. She learned that at 10. Okay.
Wow.
So she learned right away. The third one just watched what their sisters did. Okay. At a certain point, the only thing that changed, there was all these rules about changing the amount. They never wanted more money. We changed it from 420 a quarter to 140 a month. I'm like, okay, let's just change it to per month just to see trying that. After a couple years, they never asked for more money. Okay. I have the privilege of 7 years later. This happened for 7 years. They never, ever asked me for more money, ever. They're going away to college. All right, how much is in your account? I asked the one who just watched. She had $8,000. She's like, I hate clothes. I just saved all the money. I want to have money for me to do whatever I want. So she saved $8,000. Never asked me for money ever. The one who was California Pizza Kitchen had $4,000. I couldn't even believe he had $4,000. The one who bought the shoes had like $18. And she's like, wait, I wasn't supposed to spend it all? I'm like, you can do whatever you want. She goes, I thought I always had to spend it all. I always tried. I was like, well, see, look what your sisters did. And so they left for college at least already knowing what spending was, knowing what each one could do. And that was the best lesson I ever could have taught them. That was Sherry, that was my wife and I together. We had saw something before we had kids. I remember we saw something. We said, we're going to do something like this with our kids. And when it happened, we never varied. One time, one kid asked, Dad, I ran out of money. Will you transfer some money? I hung up on it like the first 3 times. I'm like, who is this?
Yeah.
The fourth time, she's like, wait, on the contract, it says that if I pay you $50 extra, I'm so embarrassed. I go, why don't you wash dishes? And I was so bad at her. So we had a big talk about that when she came home. She was like yelling at me. I was like, yelling at me? I'm yelling at you. So it was just one of those things where we all learn together.
Yeah.
This is how you set expectations. They love the freedom. They love having a card. They know it would run out. Daddy wasn't paying it. I wasn't paying it. I was just refilling it every month, the same amount. They knew how to ask for more. And so that expectation was great foundation at that worst time of the year when they just don't even want to talk to you. We just took out we got rid of a whole conversation. My wife was like, we never talk about money and clothes, ever. No. And if they want to go out with their friends, they don't even talk to me about money. They just go. So they love that independence. So I think that was probably the best thing that we decided together to do that really worked. But you have to have your faith. I think the first thing the contract said is, we're going to give you $420 a quarter. Don't buy drugs with this. We can't stop you. We know we can't. Don't do it. If we don't say it, they're going to go do it. We didn't lie to them. Don't do this. And so they're like, wow, Dad. I'm like, I'm only saying this because I mean it. Don't even think about it. They're like, well, now we're thinking about it. Oh, you're thinking about it. So I don't believe any of that. I don't buy any of that crap. So I just wanted to make sure they knew what our expectations were. This is for clothes. They used it for more than things than clothes, but they understood. Don't ever ask us for money for clothes. This was it. And it worked. So things like that, taking care of your own laundry, taking care of your own clothes. We had a thing about you either washed or you made dinner. You were either cleaning up or you were cooking. If you cooked, you didn't have to clean. They became great cooks because they hated you. So just like setting those kinds of expectations really work.
So did you have any type of like allowances for them, like where they could earn money from you?
That was it.
Okay. That was it, huh?
That was it.
So
That
I
was
got you.
it.
Huh.
For
I agree.
living in a house, I should have been paying rent. I actually feel they should have been, but they can't. You can't legally charge them rent, but I feel like I could. But they're kids. There is a setting expectation because they're going to pay rent their whole life. They're going to anyway. That is what's going to happen. So they might as well start figuring out, when I'm paying their rent, they have a certain thing they got to say. I used to say, I'm paying your rent. Okay, one day you'll be paying your own rent. But when I'm paying your rent, we're going to be doing things the way I'm saying. And so that was also something very clear. It was like, you don't own anything here. This is all mine. So that's why things in there was like, if I step on it, I throw it away. We were very clear about rules like that. When you cry, you get nothing. We were just like, that's how it is. They started crying. We just walk away and go to another room. It was amazing how they would stop crying, go to the other room, then start crying, and then they just follow us. And then it's just tough.
No, I agree with you 100%. You got to have that. I mean, it's got to be black and white. You know what I mean? It's got to be set in stone, no variation. That's one thing I tell other men when we're dealing with our parenting ministry is like, man, if you're wishy-washy, you're sending a wrong message. You cannot. You got to put your foot down. And once you make a rule, you make a rule. I mean, obviously, you cannot falter on your rules once they're set in stone.
My third guiding principle, my third one is routine and consistency every day. They thrive on consistency. They thrive at least the first 7 years. They want it to be the same. By the time they're 7, they're starting to have that personality and the other people. You've ingrained so much in them in those first 7 years. If you start wasting that time, if you're not a dad on purpose, who knows what's going to happen? It's such a crapshoot. You don't know what's going to happen anyway. You don't know what's going to happen anyway. But if you're not even part of it, it's your fault. I'm sorry. I had 4 brothers and sisters, man. We all turned out different, and there was just there were no real parenting going on at all. So it was just luck of the draw, and I'm very lucky that I did well. But it was all because in spite. It was in spite because they were so mean, and I think I was just like, man, this has got to be wrong. And you never knew when you were like making them happy because they were just never happy. So I think that was something that from the very beginning is and I say that even in the book a few times, like, man, know how to be satisfied and let your kid know you're satisfied. Man, you're doing a good job, man. Just keep it up. Do a good job. You're doing a good job.
Yeah.
If it's always like, no, why is that? Yeah, they're just things are tuning you out.
Yeah, they do. Definitely. That's one thing I've learned even with my kids is there's a point in time where you can't lecture them. You know what I mean? They know when they made mistakes.
Yeah. And the other side of that is they always are hearing you. They may not always be listening, but they're hearing. They're hearing what you're saying. They may not like it, and I think that was something. So I have a little bit more privilege of having girls now. One's 30 and 2 are 29. So now they're kind of, okay, they did turn out okay. They did do what I wanted. I'm even like, okay, I'm done. Okay, you're good. They're good. They're all getting married. One's married now. The other one's getting married in a week or 2. and the
Mm-hmm.
other one's going to marry like next year. So they're really done well, and they're like off the books for me. I'm just a great dad. I can't wait to be a granddad. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what allowed me to start writing the book, was kind of like, okay, I'm probably not going to spend much time with these grandkids. I'm getting older. By the time they're my kids' age, I'll probably be dead. So I think it's really important for me to at least say something
Mm-hmm.
and know that, their granddad was at least thinking about it. And so enough to write it down. And whether my girls or my wife like that I did that or not, it's something that I felt like was the best kind of legacy for me, better than a bench or better than something else. It was like, okay, your grandpa was making sure he understood that dad should be on purpose. Whether you're a girl and you should be marrying someone with a dad on purpose, or you're a guy and you should be on purpose, that's at least what your grandpa thought, and that's enough for me. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the other reason I did it. It was like, okay, I really have time now to reflect. I'm working, but I work only about 15 hours a week, so it's very different. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good for me to be able to kind of get some of this out of me while I still can think about it and talk about it and be clear in what happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So a big part of our organization in this podcast is dealing with fathers who have demanding careers, right? What bit of advice can you give to the fathers who want to be actively involved in their children's lives, but they have to do these crazy odd hour jobs and stuff like that?
I think it's better to be. So I write in my book a lot of things about schedules and forms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you have a schedule or a form, it doesn't say what time of day it is. It's setting expectations. It's kind of like, look, for both your kid and you, we're going to be working on this together. We're going to work
Okay.
on laundry together, or we're going to work on the what I call responsibilities for the kid. Like you were saying, there's certain rules that the kids have. We call it house rules, and we call it personal responsibilities. They have to learn to wash themselves. They have to learn to do certain things. They have to prove to you that they can do that, and then you have to go, man, you did it. Give them a star. And so, if you're part of their lives, even if it's in chunks, I worked a lot of hours. I had the privilege of doing mornings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My wife left at 5 a.m. And so I got the kids up and I took them to daycare. And that 6 to 8:30 for 5 years was a very big bonding for me. Okay.
Yeah.
That was the main time I had. My wife had the afternoons, and then I saw them at dinner time until they went to bed. That was it. So I had these two sets. If you can have two sets, then and you use them, you have plans during them, not just like you're going to sit there on your ass, which is what you want to do a lot. But there's times they go to bed, and then that's the time you're gonna have to sit on your ass, because I think that if you only get them like 2 hours here and 2 hours here, you have to have a plan. You're dancing with them if it's dinner time, okay? Doing their hair with them if it's morning time. You're
Yeah.
gonna help them make breakfast, okay? They're gonna help you clean up dishes.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that you can plan, even if they're working a lot. Even if there's 3 or 4 days that go by, even if it's on those bookends, you gotta set things up so they have expectations too, and they have something to look forward to, and so
Mm-hmm.
do you. I'm not gonna. I think if you make a decision to be a dad on purpose, and it's like, okay, I'm now knowing that's what I'm going to be doing. Let me try
Mm-hmm.
that for 2 months and see how the kid and I feel together, because you're going to be doing it for 2 years, 6 years, 10 years. Man, I used to say, it's like you're in prison, man. This is your job. This is what you're doing. You got 20 years. And
Mm-hmm.
and if you didn't think you were getting 20 years, man, that's why I'm like, we want dads to understand that's what they're doing, because they're not.
Yeah.
I'm at 30 years and I still feel like I'm giving, man. I'm crying over a strap with my kids all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
it just doesn't go away. But those first 10, 15 years, you have to be as purposeful as you can. And even though if you're on the road, it's like, no, I'm going to use the chunks. I can let them know these are the chunks. Let them understand. Let them make decisions. Dad, I only can do 4 of those. Okay, which 4 do you want? If they start getting a decision, then they're into it too. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get so rote. So give it some understanding, like from their perspective a little bit. And so I answer.
No, I agree. I think it's so important to have those expectations from in life. One of the things I'm learning now, and you're absolutely right, is my daughter just graduated and it just started a new season with her. It never ends. You know what I
That's right,
mean?
exactly.
Yeah.
Keep on working,
Thank
you got
you.
to go through that first part, and that's congratulations.
Yeah, and she chose to go to summer school. She's like, I'm going to summer school because I want to get my electives out of the way right out the gates. I don't want to take a break. And I'm like, that was a decision she made,
Because she could.
So
You let her.
yeah.
You gave her the strength to make her own decisions. That's exactly what it comes down to. She's going to anyway. You might as well
Hmm.
start letting her do it. Congratulations. That's great.
And I see the fruit of doing what you're talking about big time. I know a lot of people are out there and they're pushing gentle parenting and they're calling certain things gentle parenting and all that stuff. But I think they get confused with that term. Or allowing them to make decisions because as an adult, what are we, as a parent, our goal is to raise our children up with moral values, discipline, self-control, character, all these different things that we need to raise them up to maturity. And part of that maturity is them being able to make decisions for themselves. I can't be holding their hand, you
We
know?
have a whole chapter in my book is called decision making
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's very important to have them understand what decision making is, what the benefits of decision making are. We had very different levels of decision making.
Mm-hmm.
We'd use just like in terms of dinner, we would say, okay, is there going to be one of these three? Is there going to be pizza, Chinese, or or Italian,
Mm-hmm.
pasta? And they would pick one, and that was them having some decision making. After a while, they picked the three, and we picked the one. Or sometimes we'd say, here are three, eliminate two.
Mm-hmm.
Eliminate one, so that we would pick between two. There were different ways that they started understanding even decision making at that simple. We
Mm-hmm.
then got to a point of what something I put in the book, and we just learned it from basketball. It's called the possession arrow. The possession arrow. In basketball, the possession arrow is that whoever has the possession, if there's a jump ball, that's who gets the ball. I'm sure you probably understand possession arrow.
Yeah.
Well, in possession arrow for kids, it's okay. Here's our board on who gets the next turn. If it's all of a sudden like we need someone to make the decision for dinner, Adina gets to make it because it's her decision on the decision board. And then she makes it, and then she knows she's not making it the next two times because her sisters. And so we have possession arrows for the kids. We even have possession arrows between us and the kids because certain things we could decide together. But it was a way for them to understand that not always their turn to even make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they have to wait. Sometimes they saw people would not let them use the position. They didn't need to use the possession arrow because everybody agreed to do that anyway. It's like, why give up your turn to do that? So people could be gracious. So it was a good way of just understanding decisions are going to be constantly made in your life. You have to understand options. And to your point of, okay, drugs and other things are going to come in there. Those are decisions that can be made. There are consequences that happen. As if they're used to making decisions, at least they're not stumbling over that as well. This
Yeah.
was kind of like when they went away to college. They already knew how to spend money. It wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
they had to figure it out. They could make those mistakes with us. So we wanted them to try to make as many mistakes with us as they could. And so making stupid decisions on decisions like dinner was nothing. It was very easy for them to kind of get over. Wait, we had those 2 days. No, that's her decision. That's what we did.
Yeah.
Just even things like that, they could see consequences. And that allowed them to understand life isn't always over, or this is how you deal with it, or next time you can make a different decision. And so I think decision making is huge, and they need to understand it from the get go that that's going to be happening every time.
No, I can't agree with you more, David. I think society now has been handicapped a lot. We've handicapped our children by taking away the decision making skills. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
making decisions for them. I've read where mothers are writing essay papers for their kids to get into certain college, and
Yeah, that gets caught up with people real fast.
and it's like, holy smokes! Do you have any idea how much damage you are creating right now?
Yeah,
It's
yeah. Kids just will lose entire confidence that their parents have in them at all.
mm-hmm.
It's always like, what can they do, not what you can do, because they have to live with it. That's what he said. The best school they could get into. It's like whatever you can get into, that's it. We're not going to push any school. Whatever you can get into. So it was up to them to figure out what they could get into, what they wanted to get into. So they went on tours and they could see. But I think if you set expectations and then like, okay, we'll live with whatever it is. It is what it is. We decided that was the best we were going to do, and so it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. What other unexpected challenges did you face, David, as a father, and how did you overcome them, brother?
Well, I think that the some of the hardest things were boys.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this was one of those things where I was, always worried that, when I was younger and things seemed very loose. I mean, again, I'm a little older than some of you all, but I was kind of in that period where boys just kind of did stuff all the time. And I guess girls almost seemed like they expected it. Obviously, now that you hear it a lot of times, they didn't. Well, they didn't,
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up at a time, although I've been with my wife for over 40 years. So, with the same woman. So we've been pretty good. But this idea of what your friends did and what you're expecting boys to do, and really trying to understand that my wife was very strong about girls are going to be girls, and you have
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that you understand that what's the worst thing that can happen. We can turn our heads and pretend like they're not going to be thinking about boys or be with boys in ways that you don't want them, or
Mm-hmm.
we can be grandparents. What's the worst thing that can happen here? What is going to change their life? And I think just understanding that you need that joint cooperation where someone really understands things that you don't understand, that I just didn't understand,
Yeah.
and that even though you might feel strong about things, you have to understand, you can be wrong, or
Mm-hmm.
you should always feel like you can be persuaded. And I think there were times when I was just like, man, we know this kid's no good, and it's like, oh, she needs to find out. She needs to find it out.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're with you put off the vibe that they don't like them. Sometimes they're with them just because they know you don't like them to be with them. And so
Mm-hmm.
that even happens. And I think that's real natural
Mm-hmm.
for you to get caught up in that. And I think again, my wife did a really good job of trying to teach me to take it easy, to trust my girls, that I raised them. We
Mm-hmm.
raised them well and confident enough that they would make good decisions and they were going to pick the right kinds of people that would be good for them, and they have that will understand how good they are. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't. They don't need them to make them good. They just need them. They're better together, and
Yeah.
that's what's come out. It's been good. So understanding that we've done well together. We're 100% of the time, because you need to be that way even when you don't want to be. And so I think them seeing that, look, you got to do stuff on purpose. If you just kind of like let it go, then no one's going to have any faith in you, man. If you want to have
Mm-hmm.
faith, if you want someone to treat you like that, then you have to treat others like that, and it works. And you just kind of get in a rhythm with it, and it feels good. And every once in a while, you want to blow stuff off. And I think if you can schedule in, it's like, I need some blow off time, then you have some blow off time. Like I said, I played some golf this morning. That's my blow off time. I get 8 hours to myself once a week, and she knows it. And I'm with friends, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other things like that happen, but it's important for us to know the difference. And
Yeah.
and and so when you show up 100%, and that was what I said to the kids.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree with you. That is definitely a trying time. Daughters, especially when they get in that dating age.
Yeah, you don't have a lot to say, and the way they're dressed.
Mm-hmm.
I was, to say I'm lucky that I had beautiful daughters. I did, but having identical blonde girls was
Mm-hmm.
was tough, because a lot of the guys wanted to date them, and we knew it. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that they understood we had curfews, and we had expectations set, and if they didn't make it, they understood what was involved in that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
um, they did a great job. They did a really good job. So I couldn't have been happier.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's a testament to your guys' parenting skills.
Thanks.
I've been very fortunate too with my daughter. I would tell her a certain time and she'd come back earlier. You know what I mean? She'd
Wow,
be
that's
at
lucky.
9, she never was the hard-headed child who pushed the limits in that aspect. She totally respected us. Modesty, when it came down to modesty and dresses, she always asked my opinion, what I thought. And I
Wow,
thought that was go get her her own like her prom dress and stuff like that. I thought that was pretty awesome.
very
Another
lucky.
thing, yeah, that's not even me, man. Because if you had asked me 6 7 years ago if that was even possible, absolutely not. It just took me being intentional, like we've been talking about, to really change my perspective and work my relationship with my daughter.
Yeah,
Um, for
she cares.
me,
Who cares what
yeah,
you think?
absolutely, 100%. And a lot of what I realized is a lot of the way I reacted with my wife and my daughter is the same way. Those two, I treated them a certain way,
Yeah.
And I had to really put in the work to see why I acted that way with women, and
Yeah.
I had to change the whole perspective. I mean, it was a completely 180, and it was with the help of God that I was able to do so, because I'm just a broken dude who thought he knew what was best of what he was seen or shown or taught or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And it
Well,
was
you
wrong. And
accepted that you could be wrong, you know, that
yeah.
you could change, and you did.
Mm-hmm.
You listened to the world around you instead of kind of how you were raised or grown or whatever. It's the same thing, man. It was nothing like, I hate to say it, but you know, my daughters and my wife, it was nothing like them to tell me when I was out of line, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it humbles you. It humbles you, and
It does.
it's good. It's nothing's more humbling than, you know, somebody spitting up on your face. You know, that just happens so often with the kids that, you know, they don't care. They need that attention. They need to be the focus of your attention, and then that's what's going to get them to be able to trust you enough to go to bed when it's time to go to bed and things like that from a very
Mm-hmm.
early age. So I believe just putting those things very intentionally, kind of ritually from the beginning is kind of how you get success.
Mm-hmm. Well, so we talked about that, right? Having that trust, right? How do you create that supportive and nurturing environment for your children? Like, just through
Right? I think regimen. I think ritual
regiment?
is.
Okay.
I think ritual is the most comforting thing when
Okay.
they can know what the expectations are as much as you, and they even are the ones like, okay, it's time to do this, and you just like, yep, their expectations are being met. And
Mm-hmm.
that is just reinforcing every day for years and years. This is how we do things. And then as things get changed, they're the ones who go, okay, are we going to change them? And they have to be part of that. Well, we've done it that way for 3 years. Why should we change? Oh, because we're getting older. Can we stay up for another half hour? I think so. Yeah, should we? Okay. We talk about it. Now they have expectations. And so
Mm-hmm.
then they get upset. Hey, we'll only do this as long as everybody's really following still the same time to have your rooms ready, to have your
Mm-hmm.
teeth brushed and everything else. It's only for watching TV longer. It's not for changing the time we start things. Is it? Or which one is it? You know, and making them live to what that is whichever it is was always the thing that they loved. They loved expectations and saying, nope, that's the new rule. That's the time we're supposed to do it. Because especially with three, they could kind of keep each other in line, and we would go, no, Dean is right. Let's follow the rules. Let's go. And you had to
Mm-hmm.
stick with it. If one go, oh, it doesn't matter. No. It matters to them. Stick with the rules. We have no reason not to. It's not
Yeah.
like we're going to jail or something. We're just trying to follow something so they have expectations. And I think that's what little children really need, especially 2, 3, 4, 5 year olds. Get that ritual in their head so when they're 7, 8, 9, and 10, they're not surprised when the ritual continues, you know, or new
Mm-hmm.
things are added to it. All of a sudden, like, nope, that's been my whole life. That's kind of how things go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you all of a sudden start never having expectations until they're 7, 8 years old, you really kind of got a lot of work to do. So I think it's one of those things that I've always kind of, that's why I wrote it. It's like, they haven't had children yet. They at least
Mm-hmm.
know. I've told them this is what I did. Come on, this is what I expected. If you don't do it, at least I told you. So
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things that you start from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't, I even kind of talked about what you need to do to get people. Going to bed was one of the biggest problems my friends had. Getting people, little kids, to fall asleep and stay in their rooms was a
Yeah.
huge deal, man. Once they're 8 or 9, it's like, it's over. But man, those first 7 or 8 years can screw up your marriage.
Yeah.
And you really, can happen every night. And if you don't have consequences and understanding of what the ritual is for quiet time and when, you know, what your expectations are, you need 8 or 10 hours where you left alone, you know,
Yeah.
and when is that going to start happening and when can those expectations happen? If your kids
Mm-hmm.
are spread out and then all of a sudden one kid's screaming, the other kids are trying to fall asleep, so
Yes.
you have to set those expectations early. So I talk about sleeping, I talk about eating, you know, cleaning and
Mm-hmm.
laundry and clothes and things like that. Just the real basics of things that
Yeah.
they're going to have to do their entire lives. And between 0 and 10 is when they learn.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not teaching them, you're going to do it. You know, I say
Mm.
that a lot. It's like, well, the consequences are you're going to do it. You're going to do the laundry. Okay, fine, do it. You know, they're going to have to eventually do it. How are they going to do it when they go to college when they've never done it before? There were so many
Yeah.
kids. I said, man, these kids have never done their laundry their entire life. They couldn't even believe it when they went away to school. The
Mm.
other kids who didn't know how to use laundry, they didn't know how to spend money. They'd run up credit card bills. All of a sudden, on their parents would be upset. So I'm glad my kids had a lot of that taken out of them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I remember my daughter, she went away for camp, and she came back and she was just completely just flabbergasted. She's like, my God, there's kids that don't even know how to use a credit card
Yeah,
or or pay a bill or tip or even personal hygiene, some of them,
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like, wow,
How'd that
what are the
happen?
yeah, how did that happen? And I
Yeah.
understood and know and
What happens next, man? It's not the mistakes aren't going to happen. It's what happens next.
mm-hmm,
If you can learn from it, or at least go, okay, you screwed up. Let's make sure we all agree on that you did.
mm-hmm,
We used to call them incident reports. It's like, look, you're right now. What happened? We're all going to
mm-hmm,
agree what happened, why it pissed us off, and why it's never going to happen again. At least we're going to put it down in writing. And it was a very important thing for us to kind of make sure that we could get over it and move on.
yeah,
And so it works. So sometimes just being very purposeful and just saying, this is what happened. And then if
mm-hmm,
you screwed up, I was like, hey, well, look, I overreacted. Now I told you you'd never see your friends ever again until the century had changed or whatever. I was obviously overreacting and I apologize. I just was so upset.
mm,
So at least it gives you a chance to kind of be one-on-one with them, let them know, hey, I'm human. I screwed up. And I did. So like you said, you
mm-hmm.
know, letting them know that it's okay to screw up. It's what happens next and how you
Yes.
move on.
And that is so important when you as a father can go to him and admit that, hey, I'm not perfect either.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I
gosh
respect
darn,
people
that's
and you're never going to be. You know what?
exactly.
I mean, I'd be wrong if I thought you were. I'm never going to be. No one was made that way, like you said. I think it's one of those things where, what do you do next?
Mm-hmm.
Do you even recognize it, like you said? Did you recognize it? It's one of the few things my dad taught me was, hey, look, people are going to be right and wrong. Know when you're doing something wrong. Just know it. And then
Yeah.
make the decision on what you're going to do about it. But to think you're never going to do anything wrong is wrong. You're going to know what you do next. And it was unfortunate he was doing a lot of stuff wrong and he never did anything about it. But at least he admitted to it, before it was too late for him to. So I'm glad he did. But you have to understand you're human. They're human. They can be forgiven. But if they can
Yes.
never admit to it, if they can never even come clean to it, man, and you know it,
Mm-hmm. There's
yeah,
no healing. There's no healing.
there's no healing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you care enough, love and hate, man, they're right next to each other. It's like love, the opposite of love is indifference, love and hate.
Yeah.
You got to really, feel it when it's bothering you. And you have to address it or it'll never go away. It'll be like
Mm-hmm.
holding on like a ball and chain.
So I'm going to ask you, Dave, to be vulnerable here, brother. I want to ask you if you can share a parenting mistake or failure that taught you a valuable lesson, if you don't mind.
A failure. I think the biggest failure I had was probably not understanding that I was big and they're so little.
Mm.
And I think this understanding that I could be rough without understanding it. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
seeing things from the very beginning. Nothing happened, but things could have happened. And
Yeah.
I could see that was something that needed to be managed early. Like, why are you so mad? There's so little. What's going on? And I think this understanding that I needed something to be wrong in me
Mm.
to recognize it. And I'd say that was my biggest personal failure. It was probably 3 times. By the third time, I'm like, what the hell's going on? I really had to understand that I was overreacting for the dumbest reasons in the wrong way because I'm
Mm-hmm.
a very big person and they're a little bitty person. And I think before anything happened or was going on, which, you could see something in their eye like, wow, daddy's getting scary. Why is daddy getting scary? And there was
Yeah.
no reason for them to even have that in their eye. And I think that was my biggest fear was that
Mm-hmm.
was I was, very at the very beginning, like you said, there were 3 of them and it was
Mm-hmm.
something that happened, like I said, 2 or 3 times and enough the third time where I'm like, holy shit, this will never ever happen again. And it never
Yeah.
did. And I think it was something that needed to scare me. And I think that I could be scared by the look in their eye. And I think just
Mm-hmm.
seeing that was my biggest fear. So, and I don't run away from it because it happens. People
Yeah.
get overwhelmed, and there's no way around it. And all of a sudden you can feel very alone and they
Mm-hmm.
don't care. They don't care at all how you feel. They don't.
Yeah.
And you need to be understanding that you and you're there for them. And when you're having a bad day, you need to start finding that song, whatever it is, that you can start whistling and going, okay, this is my song. And
Mm.
that's what I did, and it helped me. And I think it was always important to be able to understand that you can start having feelings as soon as you have them, so you can stop. And
Yes.
that was the biggest thing, was really understanding that very, very early. And then it helped me because even when I was about to say something terrible, I stopped myself because I knew, okay, that's going to be really terrible. Don't say
Hmm.
it. And I didn't say it. And then I was kind of later going, ooh, I'm glad I didn't say it. So I really learned how stopping myself with feelings, maybe
Hmm.
that was something I didn't know or understand until I had kids. And it really helped me throughout my bosses and everybody else. It's like, nobody cares what you're thinking every moment, buddy. Just, you know,
Hmm.
figure out the time to say things and never angry, because it's always going to come out wrong. So
Hmm.
it's always important to kind of know that and be human enough that, man, every time I do it, it's wrong. So it's just going to happen
Hmm.
every time. And I think that's what I learned from children and learned from just being somebody who was maybe too selfish, waited a long time to have kids, and realized kids don't give a shit what you feel. They care about what they need at that moment, and it's not what you care about. And
Yeah.
so, and they can't help themselves. They're just dependent on you. So,
Yeah.
so I think that's what I learned. That's probably the hardest thing I
Hmm.
learned.
It's amazing how God uses our families, and our children, our wives as well, um, to show us where we're incomplete, right? I've seen the same thing even with my kids, right? Just being real rough with them. Um, the other day, I saw a video where I had my daughter and she was riding my back, and I was playing a bull. She liked, like bull riding and stuff like that because we grew up in the country. Anyhow, she's on my back, and I'm like, going at it. She's laughing and slapping my butt. But man, thinking back, I was like, holy smokes, man, she could have flown off and like really hurt herself. She's just a
Yeah,
tiny little thing. In the
yeah,
moment, we're having fun and we're laughing and stuff like that. But you're right. You don't realize. Fortunately, I had a wife who would tell me,
yeah.
because as fathers, that's just not a part of our nature. That's not the way we're wired.
Yeah, you grow up kind of with
Yeah.
football and wrestling, and that's
Yeah.
it's like, hurting them, and they're little girls. They're
Yeah.
different, man. Or at least, or maybe even little boy. I don't know boys because I never had them, but man, little girls, and they needed to be taken care of, and they don't remember anything except love. But she
Hmm.
did, like you said, my wife knew. It was like, hey, 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 you're like 5 times their size, but they're 10 times whatever. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I was, I needed that.
Yes, yes, we definitely need our wives' softer side to be able to intervene when our harder side is being too abrasive, right?
Yeah, whatever the intentions are, even if you are, I am trying to like fuck her off.
Yeah,
You're right. I have no idea why. I'm being an idiot. I don't,
yeah,
I can think about it now, but at the time, that's just the competitive side of the person who you are. So I get it.
yeah, for sure. No, it's amazing. Like I said, the home is the ultimate training ground for us as parents and for our children as well. And we definitely got to foster that environment for them so we could raise and train them up into maturity. That's our job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know.
Well, I feel really lucky to have been able to have that job. It's one of the hardest jobs I ever had. I took
Hmm.
it incredibly seriously. I They were always ready to grade me. They definitely gave me feedback. There was no, walking away. There were more than a few times they told me, Dad, don't walk away. And I did want to walk away, but they want to talk. And it's like, when you make a decision, you have to stick with it. But I do feel that it was the hardest and the best job I ever had.
Mm.
And now that I'm a father of the bride, I get to say words to my daughters about certain things that happened, and it makes me feel so.
Mm. Amen, man. Well, once again, David, thank you for being our guest on our show. And I just want to remind the audience, don't just have kids on purpose. Thank you for turning into the Show Up Dad podcast. David, I just want to give you the opportunity now to just share with our audience how they can reach out and get your book and get a hold of you if you don't mind.
Sure, sure. Well, my book is called Dad on Purpose, and it's I'm David at, there's a dadonpurpose.org website, and they can go on there and they can click on, and it's at Amazon, and it's available right now in all forms on Amazon. But dadonpurpose.org is my website, and it has stuff about me, how to contact me if you'd like to, and also anything about the Bible.
And
So
once
thank you very
again,
much.
brother, thank you for coming on here and just sharing all this wisdom. It's a great conversation. I appreciate you, and we'll be talking to you soon, brother.
Yeah, same here. I appreciate you too. Thanks a lot for making this fun. All right.
Absolutely, brother.